What if I told you that one of the best performing drivers in the 2026 Formula One season is barely getting talked about? Not Verstappen. Not Leclerc. Not even Hamilton. There's a driver quietly outperforming expectations, beating teammates, and pulling off results that shouldn't even be possible, and yet, almost nobody is giving them the credit they deserve. And by the end of this video, you might just see Formula One in a completely different way. The most underrated F1 driver of 2026. When people search for the most underrated F1 driver in 2026, they usually expect a big name having a quietly good season. But this isn't that. This is about a driver who is consistently delivering elite-level performance without the spotlight. And that's what makes them dangerous. Because in Formula One, attention usually follows results. But sometimes results happen in the shadows first. Why underrated in F1 is more complex than you think. Now here's where things get interesting. Being underrated in Formula One isn't just about being unknown. It's about context. You could be driving a midfield car, finishing P8 every race, and still be outperforming someone in a top team. But most fans won't notice. Why? Because F1 is a sport obsessed with podiums and championships. Not efficiency. Not consistency. Not overperformance. So when we talk about underrated F1 drivers, we're really talking about drivers who maximize everything without the car to match. The hidden performance gap nobody talks about. Let's break this down. Imagine two drivers. Driver A finishes P3 in a top-tier car. Driver B finishes P9 in a midfield car. Most people will say driver A had the better race. But what if driver B squeezed every ounce out of that car? What if P9 was actually equivalent to a P2 performance? That's the hidden performance gap. And this is exactly where underrated drivers live. They operate in a different reality, one where results don't fully reflect skill. The 2026 season is full of surprises. Now this next part might surprise you. The 2026 Formula One season has been one of the most unpredictable in years. New regulations. New car designs. Teams reshuffling performance levels. And in all that chaos, opportunities opened up. Some drivers adapted instantly. Others struggled. And a few absolutely thrived under the radar. That's where our underrated driver comes in. Because while everyone was watching the title fight, they were quietly building one of the most impressive seasons on the grid. Consistency, the silent killer of greatness. Let's talk about consistency. Because this is where underrated drivers shine the most. Anyone can have one great race. But doing it over and over again? That's elite. Our driver has been finishing races consistently in positions that frankly the car shouldn't allow. Minimal mistakes. Smart overtakes. Perfect tire management. And most importantly, no drama. And ironically, that's part of the problem. Because in Formula One, drama gets attention. Consistency gets ignored. Beating teammates is the real benchmark. And this is where most people make a mistake. They judge drivers based on overall standings instead of teammate comparison. In F1, your teammate is your true measuring stick. Same car. Same conditions. Same opportunity. So when one driver consistently outperforms their teammate, that's not luck. That's skill. And in 2026, this underrated driver is not just beating their teammate. They're dominating them. Qualifying ahead. Finishing ahead. Making fewer errors. And yet the spotlight is still somewhere else. The car factor, not all machines are equal. But here's where things get even deeper. Not all Formula One cars are created equal. Some cars are easy to drive. Others are unpredictable nightmares. And the underrated drivers? They often end up in the difficult ones. Because top teams usually have established stars. So rising or overlooked drivers get placed in challenging environments. But instead of complaining, they adapt. They evolve. They find performance where none should exist. And that's exactly what we're seeing in 2026. Moments that prove their brilliance. Now let's talk about specific moments. Because this is where everything clicks. Think about those races where chaos happens. Rain conditions. Safety cars. Unpredictable strategies. This is where talent separates itself. And our underrated driver? They shine in these moments. Perfect decision-making. Calculated risks. And an ability to stay calm when everything else falls apart. These are the races that don't always make headlines. But they're the ones that define greatness. Why fans are missing it? So why isn't everyone talking about this? Simple. Narrative. Formula One is driven by stories. Title battles. Rivalries. Big names. And if you're not part of that narrative, you get overlooked. Even if you're outperforming half the grid. And this is exactly why searching for underrated F1 drivers in 2026 is becoming more popular. Because fans are starting to notice the gap. They're realizing that performance isn't always where the spotlight is. Could this driver be a future champion? Now here's the big question. Can this underrated driver become a future world champion? And the answer is yes. But only if the opportunity comes. Because in Formula One, talent alone isn't enough. You need the right car, the right team, the right timing. But if those pieces fall into place, this driver could shock everyone. Because the foundation is already there. The skill, the mindset, the consistency. All they need is the stage. What this means for the future of F1. And this is where things get really exciting. Because every era of Formula One has that one driver. The one who starts underrated. And ends up redefining the sport. Maybe we're witnessing the early stages of that right now. Maybe in a few years, people will look back at 2026 and say, that's when it started. And suddenly, this underrated driver won't be underrated anymore. So here's the truth. The most underrated F1 driver of 2026 isn't just a hidden talent, they're a future headline waiting to happen. And the next time you watch a race, don't just look at the podium, look at the performance behind the scenes. If this opened your eyes to how Formula One really works, then you'll definitely want to watch the next video where I break down the biggest rising stars in F1 right now, and trust me, you don't want to miss that.